So today we're talking about balance in the equinox. Do you guys know what the equinox is? It is something. It is a day of the year where the light, the sunlight, and the dark are exactly equal. So that's why it's called the equinox. So our story is more about being in balance and being grateful for what you have. And it's called Why the Sky is Far Away. So in the very beginning of time, the sky was actually really close by. It was so close that people could just reach up and touch it. And early on, that's how everyone ate. They just reached up and grabbed a piece of sky and took a bite. And no one had to make fires, and no one had to go look for firewood. You didn't have to pick plants. You just reach up and take a bite. That's how they ate. And everyone, for every meal, they just took a piece of the sky. But people got kind of greedy, and they took a little bit more than maybe they should have. So they would take lots and lots and lots of bites. And the sky kind of got sad because the kids and the people would just take a bite and throw it on the ground. You guys ever wasted a piece of food before, maybe? Yeah, maybe. So people just kind of grew careless with the sky's gifts. And the sky got sad, and then the sky actually got angry because everyone was being so wasteful with his gifts. So the sky got very angry, and he looked down, and he said, "People of the earth." See, he was really, really mad. The thunder and the lightning. And he said, "You have not treated me with respect. You take all of my gifts, and you throw them all away, and you waste. And I don't like it when you guys are greedy. So if you continue being greedy, I'm just going to go further away, and I won't provide any more gifts for you." And the people, they listened, and they said, okay, I promise. We promise we won't take more than we need. So then there was a giant celebration, biggest festival in the land, and the sky provided all of the food. The tables were just piled with food. Lots and lots of cakes, and meat, and vegetables, all the food you could imagine. But the sky, he believed the people that they wouldn't waste all of his gifts, so he was very generous. And everyone ate, and they had a wonderful time, and there was music. And everyone got full, and then they went home, except for one woman named Osato. Osato liked to eat. She liked lots and lots of things. She had lots of jewelry and lots of clothing, and she ate lots and lots of food. So anything that was left over, she just went and she just ate all of the food until she was totally stuffed, and she went home. And before she went to bed, she looked up at the sky and said, "Well, that still looks pretty delicious. So nobody will mind if I take a little bit more." So she took out her spoon. She just grabbed more and more of the sky, and she just made piles and piles of food for her to eat, until she realized that maybe there was too much food for her to eat. So she called her husband to help her eat all the food. And he took a couple bites, but he didn't really want much. So she called her kids. Surely the kids will eat. You guys eat a lot of food, right? Yeah, you do. But the kids weren't that hungry, and none of the people in the village were hungry because they just had this great big celebration where everyone just ate all of the food they could imagine. But Osato just wanted more. So she got really sad, thinking, what am I going to do with all this food? And she went to bed and wasted all the food. And she woke up, in the sky, he saw these piles of food that no one ate. And so he sighed, and he just went back up, past the treetops, past the mountaintops. And then there wasn't any food for anybody. All the children woke up, and there wasn't any food to eat, and all the people, they were very hungry because they could no longer reach the sky to get any more food. And Osato, she cried. She was really sad because everybody was hungry because of her greediness, because she took more than she needed. So she said, what am I going to do? And she cried, and her tears, they fell into the earth, and the earth said, well, I can provide for you. And the earth said, you're going to need to learn how to work for it. And what kind of work do you have to do to get food from the earth? Farming, yeah. Yeah, you're going to need to provide water. And you're going to have to plant it, and you're going to have to pick the crops. Probably not buy it, but you do have to do a lot of work. So the earth said, as long as you are willing to do the work, I can provide for everyone who needs their food. But you have to make sure that you don't take more than you need, and you don't waste these gifts. Do you think have you guys ever wasted food, and maybe the next time you wanted that food, you couldn't really have it? Like you had a lot of ice cream, and then you woke up the next day, there was no more ice cream, or you had a bellyache because it's all eaten? Yeah. Yeah. Even though you're full. Well, that's one way to do it. So we have to make sure that we don't waste the gifts from the earth and from our parents and our families. And we have to make sure that we have gratitude, we're grateful and thankful. And I'm thankful that you guys sat and listened to my story. And now we're going to sing our kids up.
Celebrate the season of autumn. Believe it or not, there are seasons. I know those of us living in Hawaii know of only 2 seasons, hot and warm. But in other parts of the world and in the northern and southern hemispheres, this is a time of the year when we notice a change in the seasons. I'm sure some of you have seen those postcards of these New England streets, perhaps, that are full of orange and yellow leaves. You've seen TV, don't you watch TV? Yeah, this changing of the leaves actually takes place in some parts of the world. And so today we look at what it means to have that balance, as Jenna was mentioning earlier during the story, for all ages. That light and darkness, day and night, are of equal length. So you know how I think about the whole equinox thing? Because I sometimes get it confused. Are we in the spring solstice or winter equinox, or is it the other way around? And so whenever I start wondering in that direction, I just think to myself, oh, equal, equanimity, equinox. That makes sense, yeah? So is it just me, or did a light bulb go off for most of you? Okay, it's just me. Thank you, Harmony. Yes, I am that dense. And I think about my life around this time of the year, and I think to myself, do I have balance in my life? I don't know how many of you have ever thought about that too. Or am I working myself too hard? As many of you know, I just came back from a 2-week vacation down under with my wonderful partner. I'm not supposed to say anything negative about him this week because my mother-in-law is here, so. Or soon-to-be mother-in-law on June 14th of next year. But anyway, we're not going there. Yes, you're not the only two getting married, Ron and Mark. Anyway, the moment our plane landed, not only was I stressed out from the 30 hours of flight that I had to go through, but the moment our flight landed, I immediately went to the worship team meeting. And the day after that, I immediately worked for 12 hours during the day. And another 12 hours after that, and so on and so forth. And I thought to myself, wow, is this the story of my life or what? That as much as I played hard down under, I also came back and worked hard. And how many of you are trying to find a balance between the two? How many of you, for example, are trying to find ways to play harder? How many of you need a vacation from your job at one point or another? And how many of you find yourself needing to work harder, on the other hand? Good of you. You're hired. And so for me, it's often difficult to navigate our way through life and find where that balance is. So hopefully the autumnal equinox will be such a season for you to sit back and evaluate where you are in life. So what's this got to do with our theme for the month of September, which is truth? What's it got to do with truth? Well, I was thinking, what's the balance between truth and what's the opposite of truth? Lie, right? So in order to find a balance between the two, does that mean that if we're truthful people and honest people normally, we need to be telling more lies? Or is it finding something else to think about, right? Okay, so here's where my mind went with this. The truth of the matter is that oftentimes there's competing truths that are present in our lives. Let me give you an example of some of these truths. Jean, for example, mentioned during the prayer of concern that there was indeed a shooting that went on in Chicago, in the south side of Chicago, and 13 people were shot, including a 3-year-old boy. And that's a horrific truth about the state of the anxiety and the disturbance that's going on in our country right now. Because just a couple days before that, we all read in the news that there was also another shooting at a Navy yard near Washington, D.C. And 13 people died during that incident. And just yesterday and the other day, 39 people died at a mall in Kenya. The truth is that violence does exist in our world. What's the other truth, though, that we could hang on to? Where can we find hope in the midst of the dismal doom and gloom environment that we may sometimes find ourselves in? How many of you went to the Interfaith Thanksgiving, not Interfaith Thanksgiving, but the Interfaith Peace Service on Friday night at the Hompa Hongganji? If you had gone to that, you would have, did I see a hand go up back there somewhere? Good. So you may have known that that was also another truth, and that there is a community of people here in Hawaii who are actively working towards peace and peacemaking in our society and in our world. And what an opportunity and what a gift it was for me to be able to just sit there and be in the moment and realize that violence is not the answer. That my truth lies with how to form peaceful relationships with my sister and my brother. Can I get an email to that? That there is an alternative, that there is a truth that is deeper than the seed of violence that is in most of our hearts. And what's another truth? And I know that oftentimes there's competing truths too about what's essential in our lives and what's not essential, and how we prioritize what we focus our time and our energy and our efforts on. How many of you have heard the truth actually? Okay, remember last week when I talked about the bishop's letter, the Catholic bishop's letter, that in my opinion was full of half lies and untruths about the LGBT community? Well, guess who outranks a bishop? The Pope. Yeah. And the Pope actually came out with a statement recently that says, enough already with the preoccupation with abortion and marriage equality and all these hot-button issues. Let's go back to the fragrance and freshness of the gospel, which has to do with feeding the poor, clothing the naked, and setting the captives free. Can I get an amen to that? Yeah. And I said, yeah, it's about time. And I said amen to the Pope too. And I bet some of the cardinals who voted him in, though, did not say amen. But rather they said, can we take that white smoke back? Different realities and different levels of truth. Although I must say that he was trying to balance it out, from the other cardinals' mumblings probably, and said on Friday in front of a bunch of Catholic gynecologists that it's still a sin to perform abortion for, anyway, let's not go there. Let's stick with the positives, all right? That we do applaud the evolution that the Pope is currently going through. And so it makes me think about all these competing truths in our lives. And it makes me think, is it easier to tell the truth or is it easier to tell a lie? Some of you may think that the latter is sometimes easier because it's easier for people to accept it and to hear it. But when you really think about it, what did Shakespeare say about lies? He says, "What a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." Because lies have to be built upon other lies, and you have to get your story straight. So if you have a poor memory like me, you won't even know what really is the truth and what really is a lie. Can you? And so for me, it's a lot easier. So if you're lazy, like myself, just tell the truth. It's much easier, and it takes less work to do that. And so for me, this autumn, and as we're trying to find balance in our lives, how can we continually hang on to what is true in our lives? And how can we decide on what exactly is true and what is basic and essential to our lives? As I mentioned before, Megan and Travis just gave birth to a baby boy. And I'll have you know that I actually had an opportunity to hold baby Bunsen. And they don't have a name for such baby yet, and from what I understand, they still have 30 days to come up with a name. And they reassured me, that by the 29th day and a half, they would have come up with a name. Or did they come up with a name already?
Yeah, it's Theo. His name is Theo Robert.
Theo Robert Bunsen. All right. So that day when I was in the hospital, even though Theo was not named Theo yet, and Theo was still asleep, and Theo's eyes were not even open to the world yet, and it's all a strange place to him, and not a peep came out of Theo, I thought to myself, I bet Theo knows the truth at this point in his life that he is loved by Megan, by his dad, Travis, by me, this strange minister guy holding a little baby, not knowing what to do. And I bet that at that moment, he knew that love is what's true, as the poem indicated earlier. And I believe that this is the truth that most of us know, that all of us were born into this world loved. And somewhere along the way, somebody told us something that might have indicated otherwise, and we lost sight of that vision. And today I want to bring us back to that original truth, that you are loved, that you are worthy of love, and that you are then responsible for sharing this love with others. And you want to know what else is true, I believe? That each of us is beautiful. Remember last week when I was talking about this, that sometimes it becomes so superficial when we talk about beauty that we just say, oh, you look beautiful today, when really, behind their back we're saying, oh, that's an ugly dress that they're wearing. Remember this conversation last week? Well, I want to let you know this very day that each of you is born beautiful. And there's so much beauty that radiates from inside of you that no one could take that away. And so I'd just like to end with inviting Dennis and the band, and let's all truly sing this song together, shall we? Our song of the month, How Can Anyone Ever Tell You?
Rise once again and body and our spirit. Let's sing it to How could anyone ever tell you you are anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you are less than whole?
this truth go with you. And may this truth reside in your heart. And may this truth be the season in your life as you find balance and equanimity in your hearts and in your lives. May it be so. You may be seated.